Everybody, and welcome to our third Thursday event for August 2021, the impact of building inclusive communities in rural Illinois. We're delighted you're all here, and we know you're going to have a good morning learning about inclusive communities in rural Illinois, and also getting some updates on what's going on at Illinois Heartland Library System and at the Illinois State Library. Through the day, please remember to turn off your cameras and also mute your mics. And with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie Bednar.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's third Thursday session, which is entitled The Impact of Building Inclusive Communities in Rural Illinois. IHLS made a commitment to learning more about equity, diversity, and inclusion and bringing our members along with us. Today marks the first of what we hope are many sessions along this broad and varied topic. So thank you so much for your interest and participation in today's session. Today's session is recorded so that others can benefit from it, and also that you can go back to it and touch base when you have questions after today's session. Dr. Christopher Merritt is our speaker. He joins us from the Illinois Institute of Rural Affairs at Western Illinois University. Dr. Merritt has a deep interest in the success of libraries, and particularly public libraries. He understands the value they represent to communities, and I can't wait for him to get started, so I don't want to talk over him, and we want to give him as much time as possible with all of you. So welcome, Dr. Merritt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation. So let me try to share my screen. We'll see how this goes. And I'll see if I, does that look good to everybody? I'm assuming.
Yes, we can see it just great.
Fantastic, excellent, okay. So nothing like starting off with a quote from Karl Marx, right? I'm not a Marxist, but I like this saying, and keeping in mind this is a presentation on rural community and economic development, equity, inclusion, and maybe things we could actually do in our communities. So, but I like this quote. We make our own history, but not under conditions of our own choosing. And then it got me thinking. We've often seen this sign, "Bloom where you're planted," right? So this is a painting from Etsy. Someone's trying to sell it, but it seemed to me this is actually a reasonable paraphrase of that Marxian quote. You know, we often find ourselves in places we hadn't expect ourselves to be, and if we're not exactly happy with the way things are, there might be some limitations on what we can do, but there's always things we can do. And so that made me think of this sort of something you might see in your backyard garden or something. But anyway, linking Marx to Etsy as a starting point. So the premise, rural communities confront many challenges. And what I would also say, though, is that every community, well, it's actually very easy for most communities to look at all the deficits, right? And what I would say is that for communities to move forward, we need to sort of examine the assets that we have in our communities, of which libraries are a huge example of an asset that sometimes we don't always appreciate. You know that better than I do. And so what I'd like to say is that every community has underappreciated assets and the potential, and there's great potential to work collaboratively across the community, across the regions, to make downstate Illinois a better place. So what I'd like to do is to discuss how Illinois communities can promote rural development and assert that rural development, it turns out it's a difficult question, right? It's a difficult issue. And so what I'm going to suggest is that a solution to some of the challenges we confront, we can start local. There's a ton of things we can do locally, but we may also need intervention at the state and federal level as well. And I'll talk about those sort of three scales of analysis through the presentation. So here's an outline. I'll talk about sort of the negative narrative of rural community and economic development. There's sort of a psychology of decline, I think, that many communities feel. You know, every time you see an empty storefront, you know, sort of just a tiny reminder that things aren't the way they used to be, if you will. And so I'll just in general talk about some of the rural demographics that make it easy to buy into the negative narrative. We certainly see this in West Central Illinois, and I know in Southern Illinois as well. There's many counties that continue to decline. But then I want to suggest that we can push back against this negative narrative, and I'll talk about ABCD, asset-based community development, as opposed to needs-based community development. Let's sort of accentuate the positive. Although I want to absolutely avoid, the idea of toxic positivity, right? So this is sort of a realistic assessment of assets. And then talk about the value of community collaboration. And then I'll talk about some very specific steps for moving forward that include local approaches, some state policy changes, and then some federal support for rural development. So the negative narrative. Boy, there's a lot of things that we can point to. As librarians, many of you probably looked at the most recent census releases on the 2020 census, and you know that many rural downstate communities lost population yet again from between 2010 and 2020. So it's almost like, wow, the bad news just continues. And specific examples of this include rural depopulation and youth outmigration, loss of anchor institutions, including grocery stores and schools. Of course, I would say that libraries are an example of an anchor institution as well. The digital divide is real. There's rural poverty. There's an ongoing educational attainment gap, and quality of life issues, including access to healthcare and access to recreational opportunities. So there is this rural-urban gap, and it's easy to focus on the negative elements of our rural communities. And so it turns out I'm trained as a geographer and planner. And so I like maps, data visualization. And so the map, a little bit dated, I've got some more current data, but the data, if I showed you 2020, well, not all the 2020 data is quite released yet, as you well know, but much of it is coming, and it would tell the same story, which is that much of rural Illinois has been losing population over the past decade and beyond. We know that there's a disproportionate loss, if you will, in the younger age cohorts. And so rural Illinois is, we're losing people, and we're having an increasingly higher median age, which raises all sorts of questions about healthcare. As we get older, of course, healthcare becomes more complicated and so forth. So there's a lot of compounding challenges for rural communities. The state of Illinois is trying to address these issues, I would say. So the digital divide, and I know libraries are really, so dependent on technology these days. And you're probably aware that DCEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, did open up an Office of Broadband, and they have been deploying a $420 million initiative to increase broadband speeds and broadband accessibility and broadband subscriptions across the state. But this map, despite the really great work DCO is doing, this map shows that there's a ways to go. This was looking at American Community Survey data from 2019, looking at the percentage of households with a broadband subscription. And of course, West Central Illinois and Southern Illinois are where we have the lowest rates of internet subscription. So sort of compounding the problems for rural areas when in this day and age, we need broadband for education, for business, for healthcare access and telemedicine. This sort of gap is contributing to a widening difference between rural and urban areas. And poverty rate, just as looking at the most recent poverty estimates from American Community Survey, the lightest shading is where the highest poverty rates are, and so there's large swaths of central and southern Illinois where there's high poverty rates. And as somebody interested in community and economic development, I'm sort of interested in what the demographic trends will tell us about, what will our future workforce look like? Where will the next generation of teachers and business owners come from? And so This is a population index, and it's set to the year 2000, and looking at growth rates in the Illinois population by age cohort. And so the blue line is for population under 20, the orange line is 20 to 39, the gray line is 40 to 64 years of age, and the yellow line is the age cohort 65 and over. And this is an index, right? And so it's really set to the year 2000. And if all of the age cohorts had all of the same growth rate, they would all be along that 1.00 line. But where we see an expanding proportion of the population, we'll see the line go above 1, of course, and those age cohorts that are shrinking, of course, are below 1. And so what you basically see is that the fastest growing segment of the Illinois population is 65 and older, and the fastest shrinking segment of the Illinois population is under 20. And so thinking to the future, what does our workforce look like? This is sort of, I think, important for library consumption, right? Who's going to be our consumers in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? It's a huge issue for higher education, right? Will we have, how many students will we be able to recruit from? And what this, again, this population index is showing is that the fastest shrinking cohort is under 20, yes, and the rural under 20 cohort is shrinking faster than the urban. So the rural outmigration and the decline of young people in rural areas is a really kind of angst-inducing issue, I would say. So another map that I really kind of find compelling, the map, what it's showing is when a county's population peaked by the census year. And so what you see is that there are just many, many Illinois counties whose population peaked over a century ago, right? The red and orange counties in the map are counties where the population has peaked over a century ago. And which raises the question about this New York Times editorial. And Paul Krugman, you might know him as a Nobel Prize-winning economist. And so you see, this editorial was from back in 2019, but I thought it was just a pretty compelling article. Getting real about rural America. Nobody knows how to reverse the heartland's decline. Now, I kind of took this personally, right? I'm the director of the Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs. And in theory, I should know something about rural development, although the map on the left shows I'm not doing a very good job of reversing the population decline. And Paul Krugman is kind of calling me out on it. So it seems like, my initial reaction was, yikes, do we give up? I guess there's nothing we can do here. So, and that narrative, that negative narrative is really easy to see, whether it's, and if you're interested in community and economic development in general, you might know City Lab is really a great resource for thinking about, for writing about rural community or communities in general. And, so this was an article from a couple of years ago. Most of America's rural areas are doomed to decline. So, that just, the negative narrative, right? And it really feeds into that psychology of decline. And then, the recent release of the census data kind of just piles on this negative narrative. And so this was a little bit of an article from a little bit ago, but from the National Review. And, so their argument is, well, if your town is failing, you should just go, right? Why would you stick around? And I think, sort of voting with your feet kind of a narrative is what we see in Illinois, and we see in many places across the rural Midwest. And it's easy to buy into that narrative. So I should also say, so this is by the way, this is vaccination, just to throw a politically charged issue into the conversation. Rural areas are struggling, and I would say that they're in some ways we're not helping ourselves as a rural, because obviously the longer the COVID pandemic lasts, the longer our businesses are going to struggle, the more businesses are going to go out of business, the more stress there is on the healthcare system, the rural healthcare system, which is already struggling. So anyway, I just thought I would lob that little politically charged issue into the conversation. And so maybe I didn't get the message, however. Well, I did read the message, but maybe I didn't internalize the message that rural is a terrible place to live. I'm originally from Canada. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and spent time in the Canadian Air Force, and then got my PhD at the University of Iowa. And then my wife is originally from Massachusetts. I met her, she was a grad student going to University of Manitoba. And we were so spent time in New England, spent 7 years in Iowa City, and then moved to Macomb. And we were pretty sure we were going to be gone in 3 years, right? And back to New England to be with closer to my wife's family, or back to Canada where my extended family still lives. And a quarter of a century later, I'm still in rural Illinois. So it turns out it's actually a pretty decent place to live and to raise a family and so forth. So clearly, I see the negative narrative, and there's abundant evidence that things aren't always going in the right direction, but I would suggest that there are things we can do. And so that'll be the sort of what I will talk about for the rest of my presentation. And talk about asset-based community development, which is to help communities in general focus on their assets rather than their needs. And so I'm going to talk about some of the work that we do at the Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs. So we were founded in 1989, and we were really sort of I guess a response to the farm crisis, right? And I think people recognized in the 1980s during the farm crisis that the farm crisis was not just about farms and agriculture, it was actually a rural development crisis. There was the sense that not only do we need a healthy farm economy, we also have to have a healthy rural non-farm economy. And to be honest, most farm family income actually comes from off the farm. USDA surveys, talk about how for many farm families, better than 50% of their household income comes from off the farm. And it's often the healthcare benefits, the retirement benefits are coming from the off-farm employment. So the Institute for Rural Affairs was formed as to really focus, yes, a little bit on the agricultural side of things, but mostly on the rural non-farm economy. And so there's a governor's executive order that describes us as the state's academic clearinghouse for rural development data and initiatives. Data sounds like research, and initiative sounds like outreach. So we're a research and outreach center, which is, in the sort of current parlance, people would talk about us as not just a think tank, but a think and do tank. And the idea is that we would somehow, in working, by the way, with the Governor's Rural Affairs Council and the Lieutenant Governor, to try to conduct research and deliver outreach that hopefully makes rural places better places to live, even in the face of population decline. And that's one of the challenges, is that one of the easiest metrics that people will point to, whether or not you're doing poorly or doing well, is which direction is your population going? And if it's declining, then clearly everybody's worse off. But we're trying to suggest that it's more complicated than that, that you can still support improved quality of life in the face of, while you're trying to address the population decline issues. And so we hope that we are a solution-oriented think and do tank, and that we're trying to confront pessimism and the underlying psychology of decline by bringing some concrete results to help communities become better places. So nothing like a small font, detailed org chart, but what I'm going to quickly try to give you suggest to you is that we try to take a holistic approach to rural development. We're not particularly big. We're only 20 people, a small unit on a small regional public university out in the middle of nowhere. So we do what we can. And so our first program is called our mapping program, and the mapping is a metaphorical mapping. and it stands for Management and Planning Programs in Non-Metropolitan Groups. We do strategic visioning. We help communities find solutions and develop plans. We also, the second block is our Value-Added Sustainable Development Center. We work in the area of cooperatives, both producer cooperatives. For example, we worked along the Illinois River helping some fishers create a fish producer cooperative to deal with the Asian carp issue. We have a rural transit assistance center because one of the most important parts of community well-being is mobility and accessibility. So regardless of your ability status or your age, that you should be able to go grocery shopping, visit friends and family, go to your doctor's appointment. So working on areas of rural public transit in areas that don't typically have a fixed route transportation system. We also think that entrepreneurship is really important. And so we manage, for example, 2 small business development centers. We also have a Peace Corps Fellows program. And so we recruit returned Peace Corps volunteers. They have an undergraduate degree. They've spent their 2 years in Paraguay or Cameroon, and then they come to WIU and they can enroll in one of 10 master's programs. And then after their 2 to 3 semesters of book learning on campus, we place them in a rural Illinois community for 11 months. And it's a 40-hour per week, 11-month internship. And then we also offer a master's degree in community and economic development. And in theory, the way this all works is that we go into a community, we do a strategic visioning process, and we ask them 3 questions. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how do you get there? And we try to make this as inclusive as possible. We try to make this an intergenerational, whoever wants to attend. And for many places, this is the first time that people have ever been asked, what do you want your community to be, right? And so we try to make this very much a grassroots, consensus-based planning process. And then once we go through the planning process, where are you now, where do you want to be, how do you get there? We provide some of the nuts and bolts information that would help you figure out what kind of grant proposals should we write, what kind of specific technical assistance do we need. And then we have the implementation phase. And one of the most challenging aspects of any plan, well, yes, completing the plan, but then it's the actual implementation, right? Many people know about sort of the apocryphal plan, all these plans that have been made that are still sitting on shelves collecting dust. And so we think we have kind of a secret sauce here in that we do this sort of broad-based consensus planning for rural communities, and then we place a Peace Corps fellow into that community after the plan is completed. And for 11 months, this Peace Corps fellow is working to implement the early parts of that plan and actually making progress. So that's, in theory, how we work. And then I guess sort of the broader theory of why we do this is we kind of imagine that there's a community life cycle. And I showed earlier that many counties in our state, their populations peaked many years ago, and there's been years of decline. And what we hope we do is that when these communities are on decline, people will reach out to us. We don't approach a community. It's always sort of communities approaching us. If they're interested in kind of doing things differently, and so so we can imagine that communities evolve through a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then phase 4, starting to see a decline, retrenchment, infrastructure starting to show its age, maybe some out migration. And many communities will come to us and say, maybe we need to do something differently. And that's when our mapping program comes in, and we take a community through this revitalization, rethinking process. And so, these arrows kind of show, I think, a little maybe help understand what we're trying to do, is that often over time, there's cliques and longstanding animosity and differences of opinion about what a community should look like. And our goal is to take the community that really has no direction and maybe internal conflict, and try to get the community aligned around 3 to 5 goals, right? So we don't care if you never resolve the Cubs-Cardinals conflict, right? Clearly, or Republican or Democrat, we don't want to resolve those issues. But what we want to do is get consensus around 3 to 5 achievable goals for your community in the next 3 to 5 years. We want to be pretty concrete about that. And so an example here would this sort of mapping this, excuse me, this process out. When we go through the strategic planning process, it's not just one Sunday afternoon or something like that. It's 5 to 7 meetings, and takes place over a 2 to 4 month period. And so it turns out that community and economic development, if you're going to do it well, this is Chris's opinion, if you're going to do it well, it's going to take effort. There's not a shortcut. People might tell you there's shortcuts. I would push back and say there's no shortcuts. It turns out community development is kind of it's hard work. So we take people through this planning process. And again, a kind of a tiny chart, but this is what was an outcome for Strasburg, Illinois, back in 2007. And this is the kind of plan that we would develop for a community. And we start off at a very macro scale, and we sort of get the community to think about what its vision, what is your identity as a community? And then out of that vision comes a set of high priority goals. And again, we're still pretty abstract, right? So looking at the red arrow here, goal 1, Strasburg is the place where businesses come and entrepreneurship is encouraged. With an increase in the number of businesses, the tax base is revitalized. So there's a little bit of specificity, but there's kind of a general sense. So then how are we going to achieve, excuse me, this high priority goal? Here's a strategy. Well, maybe, so Strasburg didn't have a restaurant, didn't have a Casey's, didn't have anything. And they were really concerned because their school had been consolidated out of existence. They'd lost their convenience store, and they really felt they needed to do something. And so we need to recruit a food or drinking business. And so they had a specific project of recruiting a convenience store. And if you go over to goal 3, they thought, well, our housing stock is in decline. We probably need to figure out how to recruit people. Maybe a TIF district, a tax increment finance district. I know that schools and libraries may not always think that a TIF district is a good idea, and for good reason, but a well-crafted TIF district can, in fact, be used for the force of good, I suppose. And so anyway, that's what happened in 2007. And then 10 years later, they invited us back because that plan that they developed in 2007 is kind of like a to-do list. And so they kind of worked through that to-do list, and after 10 years, they basically accomplished everything on their to-do list. And so the red arrow is showing the projects as identified in 2007, and then the right-hand column is where the progress that was made. And I'm highlighting with the little yellow arrows specific examples of the progress that they made. So they created a TIF district. They actually brought in a Subway restaurant. It was one of those deals where it was one building that has part of the building is a gas station convenience store, and the other side is a Subway restaurant. But they also used their TIF district to turn their closed school into an asset, right? Turning a deficit into an asset. They converted the gym of the school into like a Snap Fitness 24. So they added a recreational amenity, and they also created an 8-house subdivision, which doesn't seem like much, but there's fewer than 1,000 people in Strasburg. So this was really a nice achievement. But it occurred over the course of 10 years, which goes, it made me think of Sisyphus, right? Sort of like the relentlessness. And are we ever making progress on this? But it turns out that if you take the long view and you have committed individuals, you can make positive change. Now, the realist in me wanted to check, well, between 2007 and 2017, did we reverse the population outmigration? And it did not. But what we think is that it slowed, was less decline compared to other communities. And I'm going to talk about this later. the fact that you can do an awful lot locally and still experience population decline points to the broader macro scale forces at work, which means we have to address rural demographic community economic development change at multiple scales. So some of the other work that we did, just as an example, Strasbourg is one example of where we took the community through a strategic visioning process. Mattoon is another example. We helped them develop, one of their goals was youth entrepreneurship, creating a business incubator space and filling up empty storefronts in their downtown. And so the news article on the left shows that we took them through the mapping process, and we worked with Ed Dowd there. Carlos Ortega was our Peace Corps fellow. Ed hired our Peace Corps fellow to work with the local Chamber of Commerce, and the plan that we helped them create secured for them a $250,000 Google Impact Challenge Award because of the sort of an innovation. So again, results can happen if you put your mind to it. So lots of doom and gloom. The strategic planning process is an example of a local proactive step you can do. So let me talk about some more local, and then some state, and then some federal policies that might make a difference, right? So strategic vision, and just talked about that, that's an example of local community engagement that can revitalize your community. It can enhance the social capital. It can get people together. You generate a consensus-based plan, and you build on local assets, and you can make a difference. It turns out, again, it's really hard work, but you can make a difference with the right leadership and the right create volunteer management and so forth. I'm going to also talk about community-supported enterprises. You might know them better as co-ops, community foundations, promise programs, and libraries as part of a local development strategy. We'll talk briefly about some state policy change, including support for higher education. Full disclosure, I'm an employee of a institution of higher education. And then broadband deployment. And by the way, I'm not going to speak too much about this, but I would invite you to invite Matt Schmidt, who's the director of the DCO Office of Broadband. If you've not had him as a guest speaker, he can talk at great length. The state has a $420 million broadband deployment program, and he would be, I'm going to put words in his mouth, he would love to share his ideas for rural broadband and the projects that they're funding. So that's just a suggestion. And then I'll talk about some federal strategies as well. And I'm monitoring the clock here. I think I'm sort of on time. So local strategies. And I don't know if there was any comments. I don't see anything in the chat, so that's fine. And if people do have questions midstream here, that's also fine. So thinking about local strategies for rural community development. So the negative story is that many rural communities have lost their so-called anchor institutions, right? Those institutions that you really count on a daily or weekly basis, whether it's a grocery store or a restaurant, the school, healthcare facilities. I would include a library as an anchor institution. And you might also think of these other spaces. Sometimes people call these third spaces. They're outside of home and work where people can congregate. And then what I would suggest is that community-supported enterprises or cooperatives could be a solution. Again, it's not panacea, it's not going to solve everything, but it could be part of a strategy for rural communities. And so we're calling it a rural grocery store initiative, and we've helped to jumpstart 3 grocery stores in rural Illinois. And the first, I'm going to talk a little bit about this one example in Scott County, Winchester, Illinois. It's the Great Scott Market. It's a community-owned grocery store. For the longest time, they lamented that in Scott County there wasn't a single place where you could buy like a fresh banana. There was not. So people talked about food deserts. And sort of a nutrition deficit, if you will, or alternatively, they talk about food swamp. Yeah, there's a convenience store, but it's all candy and other processed foods. So opening up a cooperatively owned grocery store with fresh food solves several issues all at once. It's a public space. We know grocery stores, right? That's where the lost and found bulletin board is. That's where you meet your neighbor. There's a lot of things that happen at a grocery store in addition to simply buying milk and bread. So anyway, the Great Scott Market. The New York Times actually did an article on this. You can see the article, the headline of this is, farm country feeds America, but just try buying groceries there. And so this is a problem in rural Illinois, that there are many rural places have lost their grocery store. Kroger's just closed 2 in trying to think where they were, in Whitehall and Carrollton, and I think also in Pana, Illinois. So there's small towns are losing their grocery stores. So what's the community response to that when these corporate decisions are made, thousands or hundreds of thousands of miles away? Communities should, I think, feel empowered to respond to this. Community-supported enterprises, cooperatives is one strategy. A second strategy are the power of community foundations. And so this is the idea that there's been a lot of wealth created in rural areas, a lot of successful farms, successful businesses, but eventually the farm couple wants to retire. They sell the farm, maybe they move into the retirement home in the little community. But here's the challenge, right? Their children have moved to Chicago or St. Louis, or they've moved to Florida or Texas or California. And then, so when that couple passes away, the wealth that was generated in rural downstate Illinois, it's going to leave Illinois. And so that's why I've highlighted this, that Illinois rural youth outmigration is actually rural wealth outmigration. And so what a community foundation can do, if it's managed well, you might be able to convince this successful farm family, this husband and wife team, or a business owner in rural, to maybe bequeath, 0.5%, 1% of their wealth, or maybe, windfall 5% of their. As you know, many farmers are, they look poor, but they're wealthy on paper, and then they sell the farm, and then in fact they do have wealth. And so, could you convince some of these successful retired farmers to bequeath a little bit of money to the local community foundation? And it turns out this is happening. Iowa and Nebraska are the leaders of this, but Illinois is catching up. So convincing wealthy business people to sort of invest in their home communities, to leave a legacy, and that money can be then reinvested in the local community, whether it's investing in healthcare or education. This little STEM lab, this little screenshot of a Facebook page, the Edgar County Community Foundation, they invested in the local high school to invest in equipment for science education, right? Both of my children went to the University of Illinois, and they would tell me about the kids that come down from Chicago just had their high, and I thought Macomb High was a pretty decent high school, but stories of high schools in Winnetka and the Chicago suburbs of how well equipped they are. So as rural communities, how do we invest in our local school system and invest in our youth? Community foundation might be the way to do that. And so it turns out there's many well-run community foundations. And so the challenge is to have that tactful conversation with the farmers and business owners in our region to leave just, leave 99.5% of your estate to your children, your favorite interest, but just leave a little bit in your community foundation, and your legacy will live long after you pass on. Promise programs. This is the idea that you figure out how to send local students to college tuition free. And there's just many hundreds of these promise programs around the state, including across the country, including several in the state of Illinois. So where does that money come from? It can actually come from community foundations, wealthy benefactors, and local tax revenues can be used to pay all or part of a student's tuition. But maybe you put conditions on that, right? Maybe you benefit from the promise program, but you have to return, to to start up a business or work, for example. But anyway, sort of addressing the youth out migration issue and addressing the expansive higher education issue through a local strategy. Libraries. So I think that libraries are an underappreciated anchor institution. I think that they are important repositories of social capital. They are safe spaces. They are centers of technology. They're catalysts of learning. They are drivers of economic development. And for those of you who have read Palaces for the People, they're sort of maybe just the best example of our need for public space that enriches our communities. And so we think specifically that we can position libraries as centers for economic development. And so this is a report from over a decade ago. The Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs, we published 3 to 4 to 5 of these research briefs, if you will, called Rural Research Reports. And we published this a long time ago, looking at public libraries and community and economic development. How do we partner? How do we position libraries, local libraries, to be part of the entrepreneurial ecosystem that a community needs? How do you provide the technical assistance, for example? How do you help small businesses with patent searches, or doing research in journal articles to sort of ground truth ideas and so on and so forth. So I think there's an absolute concrete specific role that libraries can play as agents for change in community and economic development. More recently, we published this article in 2016, and this research was looking at the Illinois Library's contribution to community economic development, estimating the monetary value of library assistance to entrepreneurs in 12 industrial sectors. So we did research here and looking at business startups and the kind of research questions they had answered by going to their library and then seeing what kind of success that they had. And so our sense is that libraries are really doing sort of an underappreciated, and we're not fully measuring the extent to which our local libraries are drivers of economic development. And so my general question would be, as a follow-up, is, how do we update this research? If you're interested, what kind of other work could we do to really position public libraries to be drivers of economic development? So that's just a sampling of local strategies that we've been looking at, we've been engaged in. So the next scale up was higher education. And my argument is that we should treat students the same way that our state treats businesses. We spend an awful lot of time in our state trying to recruit businesses into Illinois, and we spend a lot of money helping to keep businesses in Illinois. We should be doing the same thing for our students, because we know tens of thousands of students are leaving our state every year, and many of these students are from downstate. And instead of going to SIU Carbondale, they're going to Western Kentucky. Instead of going to WIU, they're going to Southeast Missouri State. They're going to Missouri State. And this is just Chris's opinion, but I think our universities, despite the massive disinvestment that our state has previously done, we still have a really high quality product in higher education. And in some cases, I would say it's better than what our surrounding states offer, but it's just not priced right. And part of that is reinvesting in higher education so that we don't want to handcuff our young people. We want to entice them and convince them that Illinois is a place to stay. And but families with their college-age kids, they have budgets, right? They have a household budget they have to address and balance. And so we need to rethink, how we support higher education in this state. Looking at the bullet points down this screen, back in 2016, 75% of New Trier college-bound high school students left the state. New Trier is one of the best, well-funded high schools in the state, and they're looking, the best and the brightest are leaving. This does not, and this is especially true of downstate. And so we need to figure out a way to counter that. So, and we need help in Springfield for that. That's a hard, working with your local elected officials, I suppose, is to convince them that support for higher education is the way, is part of a development strategy. But what I should all, and so these are just articles from, during the state budget impasse, all the different, Chicago Tribune was tracking how so many of our students were leaving the state. But then there's this article from 2018, the little red arrow down at the bottom. In this New York Times article says, Midwestern states like Illinois, Wisconsin, and Missouri, which are starving many of their public universities of funds, the takeaway would be stop. In other words, quit cutting higher education. It's just ultimately it's a long-term recipe for decline. So, but there's some good news, and many of you might know about the Illinois Innovation Network. It is it's a $500 million investment in public higher education in this state, and I would love for us to figure out how does our public library system fit into this. I don't have an answer for that. I'm going to leave that to you, but the Illinois Innovation Network is building. It's capital investments in public higher education. Innovation is the catchword, right? Using the assets of public higher education to drive economic development. It's really about the knowledge economy, and libraries are about the knowledge economy. So that's more of a question than a solution, but I just would want to know how public libraries could be part of the Illinois Innovation Network. Federal strategies. Looking at the, I have about maybe 4 or 5 more minutes, and then I'll be done. So at the federal level, what's really interesting to me is that the USDA really has the primary job of finding new markets for farm products and improving farm productivity, right? And what the interesting, at least for me as somebody interested in the rural non-farm economy, the better the USDA is at finding new markets and improving farm productivity, the better the USDA is at that, the more it is promoting rural outmigration, right? Because as farm productivity goes up, that means we need fewer farmers. So we get bigger farms, fewer farmers, fewer farms, that's rural depopulation. So, and they've also made the argument that a healthy rural farm economy needs a healthy rural non-farm economy. Now, there's a fairly straightforward solution to this, is that sort of like there's the least well-funded office within the USDA is called the USDA Rural Development. It funds a lot of non-farm programming, including the Rural Utility Service, which supports rural broadband deployment, rural business development grants, right? So it's supporting entrepreneurship in rural areas, but it's very often the first place that the federal government goes to make a cut within the USDA. I'm not sure why this isn't obvious to people who are paid much more than I am and are much smarter than me, but it seems like you should be, as the USDA, it should be like the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture and Rural Development should be, the rural development shouldn't be just an adjunct tiny office within there. It should be part of the main title, because you need a healthy non-farm economy to support the farm economy. Anyway, I'm kind of blathering. The point being, fund rural development better. And that also will then support agriculture, because we've already made the point that farmers need the non-farm economy. So that's one strategy. The second one, and probably the most politically charged and most probably unlikely to happen, is that we need immigration reform. There is just so much evidence that in the face of decades of rural depopulation, one of the factors that has either slowed rural population decline in some instances, and even a few cases where rural population growth has occurred, it's occurred because of immigration. And so, I don't know, it's kind of mega small type there, but there was a series of articles in the New York Times after the 2010 census. And there's these three maps you can see on the upper left-hand side here, looking at the Great Plains. And so the map on the left is the change in Hispanic population, and the one on the right is the change in white population. And what I think you'll see is that where the greatest amount of decrease in the white population is in the smaller areas, but you saw this enormous increase in Hispanic population. And I've highlighted one phrase here underneath the basketball playing here. Hispanics are arriving in numbers large enough to offset or even exceed the decline in the white population in many places. And then down below, and it's not just for rural development, it's really Midwestern development. The City Lab offered this article back in 2017. The Rust Belt needs legal immigration. So the second highlighted area. For the cities of the Midwest, restricting current immigration levels is the last thing they need, an unnecessary tourniquet applied to a precious supply of new regional residents and workers. So, people talk about touching Social Security as being the third rail of politics. I think immigration might be right up there, very politically charged. Here's another justification though, for why we shouldn't walk away from the topic. This was an article published just last year, and talking about what would happen, or thinking about the consequences for rural America if further restrictions were placed on immigration. And so what this map is showing is the immigration's rural population impact from 2010 to 2019. And you can see the red arrow I've pointed to here. The dark green counties are rural counties that gained because of immigration. And then the light green counties are rural counties where immigration slowed decline, right? In other words, decline would have been far worse had there not been immigrants. And if you just sort of kind of examine that map, you kind of go, wow, there are literally hundreds of counties in the United States that benefited from immigration. Probably slowed school consolidations, filled up empty storefronts on Main Street, became tax-paying residents, addressed workforce shortages in places in Illinois like Warren County, where farmland has a meatpacking plant, and Beardstown, where Excel has a meatpacking plant. So immigration is an important part, should be an important part of our rural development strategy. Chris says, acknowledging the political implications of discussing this. So some summary thoughts. There is a lot of negative discourse about rural development. I would say that we can do things about that, and we can do this at the local level. There's a lot we can do locally. State policy changes, there's a lot we can do and we are doing. I mentioned the Illinois Innovation Network and the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, the Office of Broadband, and then federal, great cocktail party conversation. Let's talk about immigration policy change in downstate Illinois, see how that goes. I also think libraries can be a solution. So you've all seen that quote, Margaret Mead. I'm going to say thank you. There's my contact information, and I would welcome any questions or comments.
I am not seeing anything in chat, but I know I have lots of questions.
Should I stop share?
I'm sorry?
Should I stop the share or?
Oh, no, this is fine. If you'd like to, you can do that. Or
okay, no, I'm fine. Yeah.
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
I think this has given us all lots to think about. And I would recommend that everyone share this information with your mayors, with your boards, with all of the powers that be in your community, and start this conversation. Start talking about ways to revitalize your communities. And, these are some powerful options. I mean, I think that the Rural Illinois Institute is like a great place to start. I mean, I love all of your demographics. You quickly show what the situation is. I think if you share some of this stuff with people, they'll be amazed. And I'd say this is a fantastic opportunity to position your library as a hub in your community and make those connections. You can be the connector. You may look at some of this as being outside of your realm as a librarian, but it's not. We're all about, as Dr. Merritt said, we kind of disseminate information. We help people connect to the information they need. And this is a great way to help them do that, that benefits your community and would also benefit your library. I know it seems like a lot of work, but if you bring the right people together and you share this, it's not as it's not as big a task as if you're trying to do it all alone. And I appreciate the point you made, Dr. Merritt, about immigration and bringing in people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, to revitalize. I've worked and lived in several Hispanic communities, and I have been I've supervised Hispanics too, and they're from my personal experience, their work ethic is incredible, and they're people who can make things out of nothing because they're used to doing that. It's just amazing, and I think they would be great assets, and I think they would thrive in some of the rural communities. Also, though, there are people in these communities already that we need to think about how we include them in this process. Maybe they, don't necessarily feel comfortable stepping out of, their little worlds, and that, but we need to hear from all voices in our communities. And, we need to help them connect to information. And I think as you look at, your community's futures, you need to hear from everybody in the community. And that's across all race lines, all economic lines, all age lines, all of those kind of things. And I think if you look at these demographics, it proves that, we need to draw on all of the resources we have. So that's kind of my stumping. I will get off my stump here and let others. I do see two other comments here. Ashley Stewart from Caseyville says, thank you for this fantastic presentation. And we do have the presentation recorded, and I see you're going to show it to your local Rotary clubs and other community meetings. Fantastic. And Debbie from Wayne City said, great presentation. I agree. I think these are all good. And Joel Picora from Tri-Township says, what would you suggest as a good first step for a library to get involved?
Well, that's a great question. When we were doing some research over 10 years ago, we were sort of thinking about entrepreneurship specifically. And so we're trying to think, how could local libraries, so let me back up. There is a statewide network of small business development centers. There's 42 of them. And we actually host two. We have one on the WIU Macomb campus and one on the WIU Quad Cities campus. And what we also know is that in downstate Illinois, there's actually a pretty strong tradition of self-employment and small business development. And so, one dimension I think of what libraries could do would be to promote themselves, maybe as an extension, and maybe talk to the closest small business development center to see if you could host a workshop on small business development, right? So we know sort of this very interesting psychology of small businesses. Sometimes small business owners, and I didn't realize, my father was a pharmacist and a small business owner. So, I grew up in a sort of but I didn't understand that sometimes business owners, if they've got a plan to start a business or expand a business, they don't want to talk about it in front of people in their own community. They'll go to a workshop 20 or 30 miles away, so they don't know, that they learn without showing their hand. So there's an interesting that sort of psychology. But the point would be here is that sometimes small business development centers like to get out into the community, and they like to do basic business startup 101 workshops. And I know we do that through we work with, for example, John Wood community, we work with community colleges. And I don't know if there would be a way to collaborate with a local community college and yourself to sort of position yourself as part of that entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? It's the idea that, and the sort of this mythology of new business startups that, Steve Jobs, we did it ourselves. And I know Barack Obama got in trouble by saying this, but we did it ourselves with no help from anybody. And I guess there's probably examples of this, but what I also know is that for many small businesses, they're borrowing money from their brother, their uncle, their aunt. They are getting unpaid help from their in-laws, and that a single new business startup can actually be quite a community endeavor. And then the survival of that new business startup depends on networks of mentors and having good advice from people who've been in business for. Anyway, it takes an ecosystem, and so one could imagine, how do our local public libraries fit into that ecosystem? Going back to Palaces for the People, and so linking up two thoughts I made today, right, which is that libraries are important anchor institutions, and then I said that immigration is should be an important part of rural development. And if you've read Palaces for the People, you know that libraries played this really important role of integrating immigrants, doing ESL classes, doing GED classes, doing a wide range of integration, really being a safe space, but also being an educational space. So one could imagine, if in rural areas you're seeing that an opportunity for immigration to come and bolster your community, what role does your local public library, in the same way that Eric Klinenberg, really wonderfully portrayed the role that libraries play in integrating, being a safe space, and really making these immigrants productive part of our economy. So that was New York City public library system, right? But then how does the downstate Illinois public library system do? How would they do the same thing? Or how are they doing the same thing, right? So, so you asked me I made a short story long. Those are just some thoughts there.
I think that sounds really exciting. And I agree with your strategies about letting the library be the place where these discussions start, because they are considered safe spaces, and libraries are designed for the sharing of ideas and, I hope, visions for the future as well. I think your presentation, Dr. Merritt, has really opened a lot of eyes and really will serve as a springboard for a lot of conversations. I see in the chat that a lot of people are planning on taking this to their mayors. They're planning on taking it to the Rotary. They're planning on putting the Institute for Illinois Rural Affairs on the map. You're gonna
I appreciate that. I mean,
hopefully you'll be very busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'll just say that any success we've had is because we've had partners. And so we're just a small little shop out here in the cornfields, just like you guys individually, but you're a system, right? And so your small individual libraries have strength as a system, which is, a nice metaphor for what we think, working collaboratively is how things happen. And so if there's a way for us to do some actual more detailed research, measuring the economic impact of our local libraries, understanding the kind of businesses that we can help, but then in more general sense, how can we position libraries to be part of a broader community economic development process? We'd love to help that as well.
Well, I think that your presentation, as you started off with the the negatives, which we've all heard and we all understand are real things out there, but as one of our, Debbie from Wayne City says, our small communities have many assets, particularly value oriented, that make them great places to live.
Absolutely.
And she says, I look forward to learning how to promote those to our new generations. And I think that, you know, we can do this. I believe in Illinois, and I believe in our rural communities, and I believe in all of our libraries in IHLS. And I think, you know, we can do this. I know the system plans on having more conversations with Dr. Merritt. And I think that, you know, let this be the beginning of a lot of great endeavors. And I certainly appreciate, and many of our participants today want to express their thanks for this presentation. And, you know, we look forward to hearing more and learning more. And I'm definitely going to follow up with your suggestion of Matt Schmidt as a presenter, because I am very curious about broadband. And I know, you know, you hear it all the time. And I have ideas. I know, like in certain places in Kentucky, you know, they really made an effort to improve broadband connections, and it's made a big difference. They were able to attract businesses in, and, you know, especially in this day of telework and, you know, as you say, telehealth and all of these other things, it makes it even more crucial. So I think he would be a great presenter. So I thank you for that suggestion.
Absolutely. And they have a grant program too. So I'm not sure what kind of collaborations exist within your each of your member libraries, but they just had a round of funding. They may be having another round that would be worth exploring, you know, grants in the area of $50,000 to $100,000 to sort of that last mile. So, and maybe there's even an opportunity for, if not the library system, maybe individual libraries to be part of a community application.
Okay.
Anyway.
Great, thank you. I know you said you had to be out of here by 11:10. I have 11:08.
Yep,
so
I'm
going to let you escape.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
going to say
so
thank you very
much.
much for your questions and your comments and the invitation. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. I think our next step, if everyone wants to take a deep breath and relax for a brief second, our next speakers will be from the Illinois State Library, giving us an update on what's happening there. Joe Natale and Pat Berg and Rita Stevens, all from the State Library, are on the line, and they are ready to share with us. I see Joe. Would you like to take it away?
I think Pat, is Pat there? Because she's going to give the State Library report.
Okay.
I talked to Karen about it and she said you were going to do that. So I can talk a little bit about the activities that are going on with the ARPA grant right now. We have, you know, just finished rounded the corner on the deadline for those, and there were 3 grant offerings, and we've received quite a few, and we're going to be reviewing those very soon and getting those turned around. It's been great to see all of that participation and all of the great questions. Also getting ready for at some point very soon to open up the school district library grant. And Gwen Harrison is the person to contact with that. It is not available right now, but it will be very soon. She is the contact. And I am finishing up this year's 2021 collection period for the IPLAR. And that ends on September 1st. And for all of those district libraries and libraries whose fiscal year ends on June 30, your IPLAR is due on September 1st. I think about half of those are in. So usually those really start piling in closer to the deadline. And ARPA has been the big thing, really. So I don't really have any other things. And obviously, Joe's going to talk a little bit about, we have a new FAQ for non-resident issues, and he is probably going to speak about some of the new rules that have been approved by JCAR. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Pat.
I'm going to talk about the non-resident rules that we pushed through. Well, we didn't push them through, but we had them approved by the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. Part of that process was taking comments from libraries, and we got quite a few, and we tried to craft the rules that would, accommodate most of those comments. And I'm going to just review the differences between what we originally proposed and what was approved. We expanded the definition of student. At first, we had kindergarten through 12, but now we've included pre-K through 12, and we're also including homeschooled students. For the veterans waiver for a free library card, if they have 70% disability, they could get a free card. We had that initially for homeowners, property owners, but we've expanded that now that if a veteran is renting, if he brings in annually to the library his certification from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs that he has 70% disabilities, he could have a free card. And that's an annual application they would have to do. Another issue we addressed, and was one of the more contentious ones, is libraries questioned if a school is under the community eligibility provision and it's free lunches for the entire district, but the library knows there are kids in that district whose parents' income exceeds the poverty level, the library can create a form that asks for the current household size, the current annualized income, and it must be signed by an adult representative of the student applicant. So that the libraries have the option to do that. And also for the homeschool students, they're not going to have any kind of certification from the school that they qualify. So a similar form would be needed to ascertain their income. So that's where we're at on those rules. They were effective July 19th. And they passed JCAR unanimously, the legislators. So, we pleased them. The FAQ that we're just touching up now is going to answer a lot of the questions about these issues and other non-resident issues, and we're going to get those posted as soon as we can. So if there's any questions about that rulemaking, I'll try to answer them now.
Okay, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat and we'll be happy to share that.
I want to add one more thing about the previous presentation. In hindsight, libraries were proactive on economic development because you all participated in promoting this 2020 census. And that's going to help with the demographics. Illinois had, we lost less people than we anticipated. Of all 50 states, Illinois ranks 7th in self-response. And of the 10 most populous states, we were first. So libraries, I think, deserve a little credit for that.
Thank you, Joe. I agree with you. I think a lot of people really worked hard on that. So that's good news that we lost fewer people than we had anticipated. So yes, and I just want to reassure everyone, Ellen and I have seen the FAQs. they're very well written, very easy to understand and follow, and I think they will answer most of your questions. I mean, I'm sure there's something that someone will ask that we haven't anticipated, but I really do think that they provide solid, thorough answers. And if they don't, then you can contact Ellen and I, and, we'll discuss it with the state library, and, they're always happy to help us out. So, Karen, I see you're on the screen. Would you like to add anything?
I would, Anna, thank you. And Pat, thank you so much for jumping in there and doing a great job with the report on the spur of the moment. One of the things that we're getting a lot of questions on is now that the new census data is being released. And the state library is actually working on, we're contracting with a third party to create a map where they are taking all of the taxing districts. So think about library districts where you're weaving throughout the counties and areas, and they are mapping the taxing districts, and they are going to overlay that with the census data so that by probably early November, we will have a good handle on populations based on the new census in library districts. So those of you in districts, I want to reassure you that that information is going to be coming forth. And as the census data trickles in, you do not have to sit on the floor in your library with maps and go track by track. We're going to do that electronically for you.
That is wonderful news. I remember 10 years ago, I was working at Fossil Ridge, which we had a huge area, 9 cities, 3 counties, and lots of rural land. And, trying to look at those census tracts and figure out the population was a nightmare. So this sounds so much better. That's very reassuring. Thank you. Okay, now I will turn it over. I will check in. Leslie, if you're still on, is there anything else you would like to add? Any other messages from the system that you would like to share?
Hi. So we are busy working on the system level. We are busy working, compiling our annual report, which is due to the state library on the 30th of September. We also have staff that are working on an update to our website. So I don't have a date for that, but I do know that as soon as that's available and we've tested it and road tested it with our staff and with some member library staff, we'll be sharing that with all of you. And I believe the rest of our staff have other updates, right, Anna?
Okay, yes.
Maybe not, maybe I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful presentation, and I really hope everybody liked it. And I did write to Anna. I was multitasking a bit. I did write to Anna and Ellen and told her that I had tears in my eyes, and that's genuine because it was the most hopeful thing that I've read or listened to in quite a while about our service area. And so I do hope that all of you got a little bit a sense of that as well.
Well, thank you, Leslie. I think it was a great presentation, and I look forward to IHLS reaching out to Dr. Merritt and seeing what we can do as a system, as well as each of our individual libraries pursuing things as well. So thank you, Leslie. Now I am going to ask communications if they have anything they would like to share with our members. Maybe they can talk a little bit more about what they're doing with the website and other efforts that are going on. They have a lot to talk about. So Danielle.
Hi. Yes. So one of the big things we just wanted to tell everyone about was a reminder of our member day that will be this year, just to save the date. That is Thursday, November 18th. It will be fully virtual again. We don't have any more details we can release at the moment, but please, be sure to check our email newsletter, our Facebook page, our website for upcoming updates on that. So I just want to let everyone know about that update. And then again, with the website, we're in the process of getting that developed and we can't wait to show everyone, but that's still probably a couple months off. We can't give a tentative date of when that's going to be complete at the moment, but trust me when I say that we are very, very excited to share that with everyone once it is all completely done. Other than that, I think that that's about it on my end. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. Now we will go to delivery. Susan, would you like to tell us what's happening with you?
Hi, thank you, Anna. Oh my gosh, that Dr. Merritt, holy cow, loads of ideas. I'm not sure I can weave delivery in there, but anyway, I would like to say that down the road, what we're working on currently is really highlighting our service where you can essentially get items the very same day that you have requested them. It's a little bit of a timing, and you just need to choose a library on your route that's ahead of you. And we are coordinating a big effort to try to promote that service. It does two things. It gets those things into the hands of your patrons so much quicker, as well as, it's not totally altruistic, it also allows items not to have to go all the way back to the hub, to be sorted, touched, put back into a tub, and sent all the way back out. So it helps, it's a partnership. It helps both IHLS delivery as well as it helps the libraries. So watch for that, anticipation around November or so for a big bang implementation. Does anyone have any questions for me? I'm trying to learn to pause more, and it just seems like that took like 5 minutes. So, well, thank you very much.
Well, I just also wanted to give a shout out to delivery. I sent out, about 50 different packets of information and puppets and all these other things to all of the this year's class of Directors University, and we did it through delivery. And you know, we got the materials from the state library. They all came down here to Carbondale. Then we put them all together and sent them out. And I have heard from many of the participants that they got the material, and that's all because of the great delivery system. Thank you. And thank you for your staff that helped with the packing and the labeling and the getting into the right places. So thank you very much, Susan.
Well, I thank you. Honestly, Illinois, we do it best. We go ahead and partner that resource sharing with delivery. And thank you, Secretary of State Jesse White. Go, Jesse.
Yay!
Yay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to now ask Ellen to give us an update on membership.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
There you
there
go.
I am. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. And I just want to start out by saying, echoing what everybody else said about Dr. Merritt. And what we hope this year is that Anna and I can provide some offerings to you pretty consistently and proactively throughout the year that for professional development. So we all are calling them the Third Thursday series. Every one of them will be recorded unless a speaker says that they choose not to because whatever they're sharing is proprietary. But we're really looking forward to launching this. And so stick with us. And as Danielle said, Member Day happens to be on a third Thursday as well. So we'll meet you again in September and October and then celebrate in November with our virtual Member Day. So that's great news.
Well,
fall is always oh, I'm sorry, Anna, go ahead.
No, Ellen.
Fall is always conference season, and we're going right into that as well. So we know that the Association for Rural and Small Libraries will be hosting a virtual choice for attending their conference. They're going to do a hybrid, so it will be in person, but also you can attend virtually. And that registration is only $75 if you're a non-member. So that's something to look forward to. And the dates for that are October 20th through the 23rd. And then ILA, the Illinois Library Association Conference, will be virtual October 12th through 14th. And the registrations for both of those are currently open. You know, we've said it a million times in a million different conversations. We miss being with everybody a lot. But at the same time, we've gotten a lot of really positive responses to doing things virtually because people are saving time and they're saving money. So, you know, this is something that when the world is a little safer for interaction, I think we're still going to keep a piece of this with us because it's proven its value in a lot of different circumstances. Other than that, Anna and I are working on developing programming for Member Day and Third Thursdays and just chugging along. We've been out to a couple of libraries and that's felt pretty good to be out. So that's what I have to report. Anna, did I forget anything?
No, it's just like, I think Ellen and I have pretty much nailed down, you know, we've heard back from the people we've approached to be presenters for Member Day, and we have our opening and closing speakers, and I am very excited. I think it's going to be a great day, and you know, I'm just very excited. I hope all of you will be as excited as we are when you see who's going to present. And I hope you all plan on attending and encourage your board members to attend because we do have a very active track for them as well. Basically, we have 3 programs that they can watch. So it's a day that, you know, they can attend and they will have something specifically for them in each of the sessions. So I encourage you all to keep that in mind as well. And now I am going to turn it over to Cher. I'm not sure, there's Cassie. Hi, Cassandra.
Good morning. Hi. Oh, it's almost not good morning anymore. Thank you so much, Anna. And again, I just concur that was a great program. Thank you so much for getting that set up for everyone. I just wanted to touch base regarding some recent changes with Share. I know you all
Hey,
probably
Cassie,
saw.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think your microphone is on the right one again.
Oh gosh, give me just a moment. Is that better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. I'm sorry. I always forget to switch it back and forth. Thank you so much for giving me the heads up that my microphone wasn't working quite properly. And so I just wanted to announce just some, I know everyone probably saw the email from Share regarding the upcoming retirement of Internet Explorer. We are on a bit of a time crunch with this change just simply because we're anticipating an upgrade to Microsoft to Windows 11, which will essentially remove Internet Explorer from your computers and it will not be able to get back. There will be continued problems after that time. And so we really encourage people to make the change now. For Barcoding Libraries, we're recommending switching to Leap because it is just a simpler product. It's a simpler solution. We do recognize the acquisitions and cataloging is not quite there yet, although we are expecting that Leap will continue to develop that. And so for those libraries, there are some instructions on the Share website. It's a PDF of screenshots that Dina Porter has created for everyone to add the remote app to your computer instead of accessing it through Internet Explorer. And so there are some instructions on how to do that. If you prefer the staff client, you're not ready to switch to Leap, or you have the cataloging functionality. So if you have any questions about that, we are here to help, but we really want to avoid a really bad day sometime in October when your computers update. So we'll take care of it now and try to get everybody set up. We also have some exciting news about the Share mobile library app. That is moving forward. We're in the testing phase. We're actually finishing up the testing phase. We do anticipate opening it up for a soft launch by the end of this month. And so what that means is that you'll be able to take a look at the app before we do the official launch to patrons. So Zach is actually going to have a presentation on the 31st at noon, so you can take a look at it and kind of get a feel for it. And so we'll be sending out a lot of information, including we're putting together a website that will have frequently asked questions, some training materials, just some resources for you. So we're really excited about that. And so if anybody has any questions about either of those things, I'm happy to help. Please feel free to send me an email. And so Kyla has a question that she hasn't switched to LEAP yet. Reports for IPLAR, collection use, etc. That is still going to be either through Simply Reports or in the staff client under utilities.
Okay, great. Are any other questions for Cassie? Okay, doesn't look like it. So I'm going to ask for you out there to all of our directors and other staff in their libraries to let us know what's happening in your library. Anything exciting, anything challenging, anything that you want to share. Please, you can unmute yourselves and join in the conversation. And if I don't get people to participate, I may be calling on some of you and asking you direct questions about what's going on. I know that you've completed summer reading programs. And I know that, some of you are thinking about, as we have the rise in, I hate to even say it, COVID numbers again. I know there's been a lot of talk on the director's chat about that. But, we can keep this positive if you'd like. How are you welcoming fall? What great programs are you planning? What events? All of those kind of things as, we get into the next season here.
I have a question or a statement. This is Sherry Eddings, and I'm the director at Blue Ridge Township in Mansfield. And we only have 3 people that work the library. There's 28 hours a week, and I'm only supposed to get 20 of those hours, which includes all of these meetings and everything else that goes on, answering emails, etc. And I am overwhelmed. And I don't know if other people in small libraries feel this way, but there's no way that we can have 2 people at the library at the same time. Our budget wouldn't, do that. But I just think that there's a lot of, I came from the business area and people responding to emails and stuff, when things don't need to be answered to all, they shouldn't be answering to all because I have 180 messages, and it's just overwhelming. We have a person that is in charge of programming, which takes a lot off my plate. And we're just, like you say, we've got one story stroll left, and then we're going to go into story time. So, but I'm really focusing on updating our disaster plans, updating our, our policy handbook, all these things that have not been updated for 3 or 4 years. I'm like, okay, we got to get this in order. So right now, people, I'm trying to prioritize, and it's kind of hard to do every once in a while, but I'm here. I'm trying to do my best job as possible, but I'm trying to hang in there. So give me some advice on, relaxation techniques or something. I can't do marijuana or any of those things, so leave those out.
Yeah, we'll just pretend you didn't even mention that one.
Yeah, that's right. medicinal purposes only.
That's right.
Well, I haven't done it so far ever in my life. So my dad was a police officer.
Well,
But
I'm glad you're keeping on, and it sounds like you're doing lots of stuff. It is challenging. And
mhm,
I don't know, I believe I've seen you join us in director's chat. And I think
mhm,
that's always a great place to talk about these kind of
right.
things and those feelings of just being overwhelmed. And it's easy to feel that way,
Well, and
especially
yeah.
with so few staff.
Mhm. Well, right now I'm cleaning out what they call the office because it's being used as a storage room. Now we have a storage shed out back, and I mean it's a big garage, and it has room for these things. And I'm like, why are we storing craft stuff inside where, so I have ordered a laptop so that I can go up there and be, when other people are working, and go in and do some of my things at the library instead of doing them from home, so that's in the process too. So,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Sherry, we have some other comments
Okay.
on the chat, so I'm going to
Okay. All right. I'm
have
going
to.
to mute myself.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. I see that Tina from 6 Mile Regional has said that her mayor, yay, has issued a proclamation that for September library card sign up month, and for people to get their 6 Mile Regional Library District card. I think that's exciting. And I see that David from Tri Township has said that they're hosting the Madison County Health Department for a vaccination drive. It will be on August 25th from 4 to 6 p.m. So if any of you are in that area and haven't had the vaccination, and if you're interested, sounds like a great opportunity. Janet from Rochester has said that we are holding our second annual Fall Festival, October 23rd and 24th, at their local park. That sounds like a lot of fun. I love fall festivals. I'm not into pumpkin spice so much, but the rest of fall I find really exciting. So I wish I were closer, Janet. I would pop over and see what was going on in your park. Ashley from Caseyville says, Sherry, we have all been there. Feel free to reach others reach out to other neighboring directors, because we're all always happy to help. If you are on Facebook, there are some great groups and pages to get advice as well. Boy, yes. I know there's there's that one on management. I can't remember the name of it. That's a good one. And, yeah, it's, yeah. And I think we've all felt like we've been through the wars with all of the COVID things and all of the changes and all of the constant pivoting and, and just when we thought things were coming back to normal, now things are changing again. So yeah, I think Ashley's suggestions are great. If you need to reach out, you'll find that librarians are very supportive. We love sharing. We love talking about all kinds of issues. Ellen says, yes, the Facebook group is called Library Management. And Carol from Doherty said, September is also Recovery Month. And Chestnut donated 10 books about addiction and is going to put a table up at our library with information throughout September. That's great. Maybe, people can, I think that's a good way to get people into the library. And while they're there signing up for their September library card sign up month, they can also look at those materials. And Joel from Tri Township says, we're also partnering with Chestnut this September. They have been great to work with. Would anyone like to talk more about Chestnut for the rest of us who I'm not familiar with that organization, but I would love to find out more. Joel, if you'd like to unmute yourself and tell us, that would be great. Or Carol, either one of you.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Hello? Hello, can
Yeah,
everyone hear
Joel.
me? There we go. Okay, sorry. So Chestnut is a health center that specializes in addiction recovery and mental health treatment. So they reached out to us through our community liaison sometime in July, I believe. And they had a list of books that were interested in donating, and we actually went ahead and expanded our own addiction collection to put on display. So we're going to be getting their resources on our usual display table. And I'm going to be putting together the digital display with the books they recommended and the ones that we purchased.
That's great. I think that I remember seeing some statistics that COVID was very hard on people with addictions. And so I think it's great that your libraries are, have found that partnership and can reach out to people who are struggling with those issues. So thank you for that clarification, Joel. Let's see here. Kyla says the Mississippi Valley Library District and Caseyville Library District participated at the in-person student registration event for our local school district. We also coordinated with the school district to authorize parents and guardians to opt into sharing student data with the local public libraries for the purposes of creating library accounts. As of a few weeks ago, there are roughly about an 85% opt-in rate. Oh, that's fantastic. That's really great. I'm sure that the card sign up was significant as well. That's fantastic. And Chestnut, Robin says that Chestnut counselors meet with students here at the library during the summer. Oh, that's really great. And way to go with the Cahock Reads program from Leslie to Ashley and Kyla. Carol says they received a grant from the Department of Human Services recovery-oriented systems of care for the Chestnut people, and that's part of how they're reaching out to our libraries. So that is fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to share about what's happening in their libraries? Yes, the Cahokia Library is open. I see that was one of Carol's questions, so. If you're having problems reaching them, just email me, Carol, and we can talk about it. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I thank all of you for participating today. I hope you found it worthwhile. I look forward to seeing you all on the third Thursday of September. So take care, have a good rest of your day, and we will be talking to you. Bye.